Hello, welcome to Brant Ranch Garage. Today we're going to be doing the final build on these cast iron 289 Ford heads. A little backstory on this project. We bought a 67 289 core for $100 on Craigslist. And even driving home from picking it up, my son was saying, "Oh, you know what? We should put this in my Miata." And, you know, as a parent, we all do selfless and generous things for our children. And to be honest, it sounded like a pretty good idea. So here's what we're working with. We've got C6OE-M heads. And the casting date is August 11th of 1966. So I wanted to go over what we've done so far with this build. In 1966 or 67, the California emissions required a thermoactor system to be installed on passenger car engines. And what that amounted to was a manifold and port that would blow air into the exhaust ports. And it was originally machined into this location here. Well, on the inside of the port, there was a large lump sitting right about here. I'll show a picture in a little bit. But one of the best things that you can do for these heads is to machine them to remove that, you know, solid cast iron lump. And we've done that on all these heads. After we did that porting process on the exhaust ports, we dropped these heads off to Nolan Cylinder Heads in Kansas City, and they've always done a great job for me. It's a really wonderful old-time shop that does fantastic work. What they did to these heads is they installed new valve guides, they installed hardened exhaust seats, and they did a nice valve job on the heads. I also had them machine the rocker stud stands down so that we could install guide plates and screw in rocker studs. We're using an ISKI cam and wanted a mechanical cam and wanted screw-in studs and guide plates for that. One thing I failed to do was have Nolan's machine down the guides for our dual springs. And you can see by this shim that we have a problem. So I ended up probably saving $50 and spending $130 for this seat cutter. And so the first step in this process is we're going to cut all the seats for the spring seats for the bigger valve springs. Okay, so here we go. I've never done this before, but I don't let that stop me. I'm going to put a little motor oil on the cutting surface, a little bit on the arbor, and we'll give it a go. Obviously I don't want to cut too far, so we'll see how this goes. Yeah, okay, that seems to be leaving enough of the valve stem insert. I went until it just started to kiss the rest of the spring seat, and I'm going to call that good. So I'll go ahead and do 15 more. Okay, so here's where we ended up. I found that I could pretty effectively know when to stop by watching the pattern get larger than the piece that we were cutting out. And you can see that the shim and the spring fit now just right. So that was a critical step that we really had to do. I sweated a lot about how to get the chips cleaned out of this, because obviously you don't want anything into the engine that could kill a bearing or whatever. I decided that the power washer was the best bet. Might have been overkill, but that's kind of how we roll over here. And so I power washed them and got all the chips out, and then dried them with compressed air and sprayed them down with WD-40 to prevent flash rust. We had a little bit happen, but I think we could have sprayed the WD-40 first, and it would have displaced the water and then dried them. So next time, that would be a good idea. Okay, so the next step involves installing these beautiful Ferrea stainless steel valves into their forever homes. And we're going to measure the spring installed height with this spring seat install height micrometer. That will tell us how many shims to use under the springs to get the appropriate spring install height. So we put this on there, and we install a retainer and keepers. It's kind of fiddly, I admit it. Okay, so then we turn this down and we take a reading. It is 1.785. And we're looking for 1.75. So that one probably is close enough. The shims I have are 30 thousandths. So I won't be able to get perfect, but I'm going to err on the side of lighter spring pressure, just to prevent coil bind and wear and tear on the valve train, stuff like that. So through the magic of TV, I have done all the valves on both heads, and we're ready to go on to the next step, which is valve seals. This is the assembly lube that I use. I've always used this, and I'm pleased that they still make it. The next step, the thing I'm doing now is really, I have to give credit to Brent Likens. He did this on a video, and I think it's a good idea. I'm going to put a little assembly lube on the valve stem before I put it in for good. Might as well do this one while I'm at it. Okay, So to install these positive valve stem seals, we need to use this little protector that goes onto the end of the valve to help it slide over the keeper groove a little better and not damage it. We also need a driver of some kind. I have an actual tool for this for FE motors, which have a 3/8 inch valve, but I don't have anything fancy for the small blocks. But I found that a 13 millimeter socket, 6-point, is pretty good fit for the valve stem. So let's see how this is going to go on. That didn't work very well. Might have to use a different size socket. I was pushing the clamp past the ridge on the seal. Hang on, let me find something else that'll work. Okay, so I got that one on using a 12 millimeter. We're sticking with the metric system today. And I liked using the 13 to get it started, so I think that's what we're going to continue and see if we can get all of these done that way. Yeah, that wasn't half bad. Okay, all right, so I will go ahead and do the rest of these and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so all installed on both heads. I don't know why, that is always the most stressful part of an installation. I wanted to point out a couple things. The little plastic protector lasted 2 valves. And so, and also pushing on 3/8 inch extension really does a number on your palm. So if you can all find one, this professional tool really would have been nice to use. It's the pusher and also a metal protector. But this is for 3/8 inch valves and won't work for these 11/32 valves. Next step, we're going to put the shims on and install the valve springs. Okay, so I've got 32 shims and they are 0.030 inch thick. And so I've gone through all my install heights and figured out how many shims I can use on each spot. And the thing I noticed is the intake valves are sunk in quite a bit further than the exhaust, because obviously they made new seats for the exhaust with the hardened seats, and they're working with just the regular, worn seat from when the engine was first built. So this kind of makes you argue that it might have been a good idea to try to find slightly larger intake valves so that they could install them at a better height but it's not that bad. I can get very close with the shims that I've got, and so I'm going to go ahead and start assembling the head and installing the valve springs. So I've made a note that I want one shim on this first exhaust, and then I put on the valve spring and the retainer, and then we take our good old Leslie spring compressor and with an exceptional amount of effort we compress the spring and put our keepers on. And there we go. I would have to say that that is a complete and correctly installed valve spring and valve. Looks good. The keepers stayed in their place. That's the big worry, is that one will slip out and then you'll have to do it all over. But looks good. I think we're ready to go. I'll go ahead and do all the rest of them and talk to you later. Okay, we are all set, and I think they look beautiful. I really think these are going to be good heads for Evans Miata. I love those valves. They just look so great, and I know they flow really well. I also have to correct myself. This beautiful spring compressor that I've had for 40 years, it was manufactured by KD Manufacturing Company of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I bet you $10 that they still make it, and people are using them all over the world. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with it. Be sure to subscribe. We're going to do lots more fun projects.